Hey everyone, welcome to AP United States History. This is Mrs. Leeming. The goal of this slide set is to give you a broad overview of the AP United States History exam, which is administered in May. Everything that we do in this course is geared towards mastery of the content and the skills that you need to be successful on the AP test. So let's go ahead and look at a broad overview of what the AP United States History exam is all about. So it's a 3-hour test, which is, pretty long. Some of you guys probably have never sat for something that long. So it's kind of grueling. But it is split up into 2 sections. You do get a break in between, so it helps out a little bit. Let's look at section number 1. So section number 1 has 2 things that you're going to be doing, 2 tasks. The first one would be your multiple choice questions. Now these multiple choice questions, which I will be going over shortly, are different than what some of you guys have seen in the past. It's not like a typical content-based question, like what is this? What date is this? These are stimulus-based multiple choice questions which require thinking and a little bit more knowledge than what some of you guys might be used to. But we do a lot of practice of these things because if you look at it, it's 40% of the overall AP exam, which to me, that's a lot. So I really focus a lot on those multiple choice questions. So you have 55 questions in 55 minutes. And that's something for some of you that might be challenging because you have to knock these things out 1 a minute. And some of these require reading and analysis, but we will practice these things over and over and over and over again. So by the time you get to your first test, by the time you take the AP test, you guys are going to be very comfortable with these types of questions. The second part of section 1 are short answer questions, or the SAQ. You're going to be presented with 4 questions. You only have to answer 3 of those questions though. So you can see that the first 2 questions that you get, that these 2 are required. There's no choice in that. But the third question that you answer, you get to choose between 2 questions. And these 2 questions are going to be from different time periods, periods 1 through 5 or periods 6 through 9. And you choose which one that you want between those 2. The short answer questions are 40 minutes for threading 3 of those things, and it's 20% of the overall exam score. When you're done with your short answer questions, then you get to take a break, which I think is like 15 minutes or so. And then you come back and you have what's called your free response section, which is all of your writing. So you get a 100-minute time period to write what's called your document-based question, or your DBQ, or your LEQ, also known as the long essay question. So you have 100 minutes to do that. You can divvy up that time however you want. You don't have to do the DBQ first. You can actually write the long essay first if you so are inclined to do that. So let's look at briefly the document-based question, or the DBQ. You don't get a choice in this. They just throw a question at you. You're going to be presented with 7 documents, and then you have a question related to those documents. Your task is to answer those questions using the documents as evidence to support whatever your argument is. So the recommended time on that is 60 minutes. So they recommend you spending 15 minutes reading through the documents, and then about 45 minutes or so to actually write the paper itself. I think, again, you can play around with the timing on this because, again, you're given 100 minutes. You can divvy it up how you want. I recommend probably spending about a good 50 minutes or so writing the DBQ. Reason for that is 25% of the overall score of the AP test. That's the second highest category. So multiple choice, 40%, and your DBQ, which is 25%. I'm all about strategy and getting you to be successful to pass that exam. So what do I spend most time really trying to get you guys to master? Multiple choice and the DBQ. That's 65% of the overall score. If you can rock those 2 things out, you're gold. You're going to pass the AP test, no problem. If you do those 2 very well and you do decent on the short answers and the long essay question, you're going to get a 4 or a 5, guaranteed. But again, really looking at those numbers, 40%, 25%, that's what I really want to focus on. Looking at part B of the free response section, the long essay question or the LEQ, this is just like a regular essay. They're just going to give you an essay question and you construct an argument and you support it with evidence from your own personal knowledge of what we've learned. So with the LEQ, you get 3 choices. And it's all based upon time periods. So period 1 through 3 is your first choice, periods 4 through 6 would be your second choice, 7 through 9 your third choice. Whatever you're most comfortable with, I would pick the question that you could answer the best. You know, you don't want to choose a question that you think is the easiest. Pick the one that you know that you can rock out. Okay, don't worry about what these time periods are at this point in time. Of course, we'll be going over that a little bit actually within this presentation, but definitely throughout the year. So that in general is you know, a basic overview of the AP test. 2 sections, first section multiple choice and short answer, and then the second section is going to be your free response, your essays. You have 2 essays you have to write. So let's go ahead and look a little bit more in depth at what's required in each of these things. So multiple choice, again, you have 55 stimulus-based multiple choice questions. What I mean by stimulus-based, if you look at this example that I have, this is a quote from a speech from Alexander Hamilton at the Constitutional Convention in 1787. This is the stimulus, okay, this quote. Okay, you can have text, images, charts, graphs. Those are all stimuli. So with this particular stimulus right here, you have a set of questions, and the set of questions can be 2 to 5 questions per set, and all these questions are based on this stimulus right here. Okay, so 12, 13, and 14, they're all asking you to analyze what Alexander Hamilton is saying. One of the things that's kind of important, I think, to know about the multiple choice questions is that they can only assess content knowledge only within the framework. So I'm given, and I will show this to you at some point in time, I'm given a kind of like a guide for the course, and I have a framework, and it kind of has all of the things that, okay, you need to teach this, you need to teach that type of thing. But not everything in there, you know, is going to reflect every single aspect of United States history. So I may talk about things in class that are not in that framework. If I talk about something in class that's not in the framework, there won't be a multiple choice question on it. The multiple choice questions can only come from topics that are within the printed framework from the College Board. So it might be worth the effort to actually download that framework yourself and to kind of follow along as we go through the course. Also take note that questions in the set can make connections to other time periods. That's a skill that had been assessed in writing in previous years of this course called synthesis. So you can see that there. Again, the multiple choice questions, 55 minutes, 40% of your overall score. Again, I think the multiple choice very, very important. Here's just some other examples of multiple choice questions that you would see. So here you have a stimuli, which is a map of the growth of the United States from 1783 to 1853, and then you have a set of 4 questions. So all 4 of those questions are in direct relation to this map right here. Part B of section 1 of the AP test is going to be your short answer questions, or SAQ. So again, you'll get 4 questions. Questions 1 and 2 are required. You don't have a choice. You have to do those. And then for the third question that you answer, you will be given 2 questions from 2 different time periods, and you choose which one that you know that you can rock out, and then you can answer the best. I have a strategy. It's not my own strategy. I didn't make this up. It's something a lot of APUSH teachers use. The APE strategy, I'll go over that in a little bit. The short answer questions are, for some people, they're kind of difficult because, I mean, you're just answering the questions. So you get, sometimes you'll get a stimulus like this. You have 2 different quotes right here. And then you have 3 questions that you have to answer for this particular short answer question. You keep each answer separate, so you'll be given a box that has lines on it. So question A, briefly explain one implication for public policy of John Muir's view on land use. You answer that question in about 3-4 sentences. And you just do exactly what it says using the APE strategy. And then skip a line. B, briefly explain one way in which an implication for public policy of Roosevelt's view contrasts with the implication for public policy of Muir's view. Same thing. You answer the question using the APE strategy. 3 to 4 sentences. Skip a line. C, do what it says using the APE strategy. Boom, you're done. You turn over to the next box, and then you answer your second SAQ question. Okay. These are not mini arguments. You know, almost everything you do in this class, you're arguing something. You know, you state what your claim is, and then you have to provide all this evidence. You know, you're not, these are not essays. You're just answering the questions. So again, the short answer questions, you have 3 of those that you write, 40 minutes, 20% of the overall score. This is the question box that I was referred to. So you will have 3 question boxes. So you have to construct your response within this box. So for question 1, it has to fit. You know, A, answer the question. B, answer the question. C, answer the question. It cannot go outside of the box. You cannot write in the margins. Anything that you write in the margins, it won't count. Let's say that you write questions 1 and 2 in the question 1 box. It won't count. Let's say you mess up and you write question 2 in the question 1 box and question 1 in the question 2 box. It won't count. So you have to make sure that, 1, you answer the right question on the right form, and then secondly, you have to make sure that your response is completely within that box. So if you have like big bubbly writing, you're going to have to adjust that for the short answer questions. This is the APE strategy. We'll be using this all year, but I'm just going to introduce it to you right here. So again, you're given a particular question. You want to answer it. That's the A part of it. So answer, you know, what it's asking you, and then you need to provide evidence. You know, so you're saying, you know, this is what I think, and then you want to, if there's a document or some type of a stimuli that's involved, then you want to use that document directly, or you're going to need to use your outside knowledge, but you have to provide some type of evidence of your claim. What's your proof? That's the P, provide proof. Okay, and this is very important, this idea of quotes. Never ever use quotes in anything that you do in this class. I'll explain why that is at some other point in time, but never use quotes. Don't use it on the SAQ, don't use it on any essay, do not use it on the DBQ, no quotes. Okay, so P, provide proof, that's your evidence. And then E is explain how your proof or your evidence proves your point in A. So you're answering the question, what is your evidence and how does your evidence prove what you're saying? So that's the overall strategy for the SAQ. APE. So here's some examples of SAQs. SAQ 1 that you see, this is a required one that you have to write. This will be a secondary source or secondary sources where you're comparing maybe 2 historians and what their point of view is on the same subject. So it could be 1 or it can be 2 sources, but they're all secondary sources. Okay, and we'll talk about primary and secondary sources on another day. So SAQ 1 will only come from periods 3 through 8, when I put the dates here for this one. So 1754 to 1980. So roughly we're looking at French and Indian War through the election of Ronald Reagan. And see, you can see from this again, you've got these 2 sources, and then you've got your 3 questions, A, B, and C, and I put the APE strategy so you can kind of connect the 2 there. For SAQ2, again, this one is required. This one will be in terms of skill set, will be comparison or causation. So comparing, two things, or like a cause and effect. It'll be one of those skills. This one will be a primary source. So this will actually be from the time period itself. So it can be a text, or in this case, it's a visual source. And again, time periods, we're looking at periods 3 through 8, which again is 1754 through 1980. And again, you've got your stimulus, you have your A, B, and C, answer each one A, B, and C, and then apply the APE strategy to that, and you're good. Now for SAQ3, this is where you actually have choice involved. When we're looking at the choice, you're given 2 SAQ questions, and you can see choose either question 3 or question 4. These ones don't have a stimuli, but I assume they might have a stimulus, or maybe not. Question 3, okay, question 3 is comparison or causation. No stimulus involved. Question 4 will be a different skill than the comparison or causation, and it may or may not have a stimulus. Okay, so question 3 will never have a stimulus. Question 4 may or may not have a stimulus. Again, A, B, and C. Choose the 1, 3, or 4 that works best for you and apply the APE strategy. Put it in the box, and you're done with the SAQs. In terms of scoring the response, again, you have to do everything that it asks you to do. So if the question is asking you to compare and contrast, you have to compare and contrast. You can't just compare. You have to do both of those things. If it's asking you for cause and effect, you got to do both of those. Essentially, you have to do what the task is asking you to do. You got to provide the proof, the evidence. You have to analyze. Again, you can't just tell history. Nothing you do in this class is just regurgitating what I tell you in class, like in a lecture, or like what you read in a textbook. Okay, everything is analysis and critical thinking and applying that to your knowledge. Let's look at the long essay question, or the LEQ. So for the LEQ, you have one of these that you have to write. This is basically just a regular essay for the most part. Okay, your standard introduction, your supporting body paragraphs, and your conclusion. So you have 3 options when it comes to the long essay question. You choose one. And then you can see that there's broken down by time period. So you can choose which time period works best for you. You can choose the question, again, that works best for you. Again, not the one that you think is the easiest, but you want to pick the one you know the most information about. Pick the one on a time period that you're the most familiar with. Now, all questions will address the same theme, and we'll talk about themes later, but we'll just say one of the themes is American identity. Okay, so if that's the theme that they're trying to assess, all 3 questions will be that same theme. And again, you're going to choose the time period and the topic that works the best for you. They also are all going to address the same reasoning skill or historical thinking skill. So all 3 questions will be either contextualization, causation, comparison, or changing continuity over time. Again, we'll talk about all of those throughout the course. Again, the only thing that's going to be really different about 2, 3, and 4 is going to be the time periods and the topic, the content. Now, with the long essay question, you have to have a thesis statement. You got to have an argument. You have to have a claim. And then everything that you write about is in support of that particular argument. Again, you're not regurgitating history. So again, if we're looking at, question 3 says, evaluate the extent to which new technology fostered change in the United States industry from 1865 to 1900. You're not just going to sit there and talk about Cornelius Vanderbilt and the railroads and what he did. or John Rockefeller and the oil industry and what that was and what that did. It's asking you to evaluate the extent to which, so how much did technology foster change? That's what you're trying to do. And you need to have an argument that answers that question, and then everything that you bring into that needs to help prove whatever your claim is in regards to the extent of change that this technology brought. Let's see. So you got to provide that relevant evidence. Super important. Again, the LEQ section, we're looking at 40 minutes. The rubric, which I'll show you, is a 6-point scale, and this is worth 15% of the overall exam score. What does a good response look like? Again, I'm not going to get into all the details on this. You can actually read this yourself, but you have to have contextualization. So you got to place the topic in context of what's going on in the larger scheme of things. You have to have a solid, relevant, reasonable argument or a claim. You have to provide evidence. You have to answer the question. You have to analyze, not tell. There are so many things that you need to be able to do that's not simply explaining, telling what was going on in relation to that particular topic. Again, you're not regurgitating history. You're not just memorizing what's in the textbook and then putting it into your own words in your essay. That's going to get you nowhere in this class. You got to have that solid argument and that evidence to back it up. This is what the rubric looks like. You'll be very familiar with this. Every single LEQ that you write, I will attach this to your essay, and we'll put check marks. Like if I think that for your contextualization, you're in the C category, I'll put a check mark right there. If I think your thesis is rock solid, it's like the best thesis I've ever read in my life, then I might put that in this category right here. And then it's a 6-point scale, and you can see the points of 5, 6, 4, 5, 3, 4. So if you're in these two boxes right here, then you're going to earn the point for that particular task that you need to do. So contextualization, your thesis, your evidence, again, what you need to do to get those points, your analysis and reasoning. And again, we'll go over all of these rubrics on another day. And then we have the document-based question, the DBQ, which a lot of kids don't like. I think it's actually relatively easy to do. Like with the LEQ, you're not really given anything to go off of. The DBQ, you're given 7 documents to kind of jog your memory and to kind of, take these documents kind of like a puzzle almost and piece everything together to make some sense out of it. But other than that, the DBQ is basically, again, it's just an essay where you have your thesis, your claim, you have your supporting paragraphs, and you have your conclusion. It's just that you have to use documents to help support whatever your claim is. That's part of your evidence, that outside information. And then the analysis of the documents itself you have to do in a particular way. Again, I'm not going to go over how to write a DBQ right now. I'm just trying to give you a broad overview of what all of these elements of the AP test are. Let's see. The DBQ is based on periods 3 through 8. So roughly, again, looking at French and Indian War through the election of Ronald Reagan. If you remember what I said earlier, it says 60 minutes, but you divvy up that 100 minutes in the free response section how you want. So you can spend 70 minutes on this if you wanted to, and 30 minutes on the LEQ. You can do 20 minutes on the LEQ and 80 minutes on the DBQ if you wanted to. I think it's more important to spend more time on the DBQ simply because the value of a DBQ, we're looking at 20%, 25% of the overall exam score versus 15% of the LEQ. So let's look at what a DBQ actually looks like. Again, you're given a set always of 7 documents. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, 6, 7. The documents, these are all text, but you can have charts and graphs and pictures and maps and political cartoons. So it's not always just simply text. You can have speeches, newspaper articles, and there's all kinds of stuff that you can have for documents. They can be primary sources, they can be secondary sources. So your task initially, you want to spend about 15 to 20 minutes actually reading through all the documents and annotating the documents. You know, looking at the source, sometimes that's very important to know who actually wrote this thing. And then you want to read through your documents. You want to look for the main idea, and then any outside information that might be relevant that goes along with those particular documents. So again, you want to spend about 15-20 minutes or so doing that for all 7 documents. And the question, by the way, will always be posed first. So the question for this document-based question is: evaluate the extent to which differing ideas of national identity shaped views of United States overseas expansion in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. So all those documents that you see here, they're all related to that particular question. You'll be using these documents as evidence to support whatever your claim is. But you don't quote. Remember I talked earlier about quoting. You never quote from these documents. Okay, now once we get to the DBQ and how to write DBQ, I will explain how to actually source these documents within your essays. Okay, so that's what a DBQ looks like. Oops, that's from an old one. Sorry about that. And then this is the rubric that we'll be using for this year. So just like the LEQ rubric, same thing. You have different things that you have to do, the different tasks. So you have to provide contextualization. You got to have a rock solid thesis. You have to have evidence. There's different types of evidence. And then your historical thinking skills and how you use those things, how you use the documents. That's all included in here. So let's say, again, for your contextualization, you rock it out. I might put my check mark right here. And so you'll get the 1 point. This is on a 7-point scale, by the way. So you'll get the point for that if you're in the B and A categories. The C category, you may or may not get the point. So that's the rubric. Again, we'll go over the rubric more specifically on another day. Just want to give you an overview. Historical reasoning thinking skills. So every exam question, be it the multiple choice, the SAQ, the DBQ, the LEQ, everything is based upon these 4 historical reasoning / historical thinking skills. So contextualization, comparison, causation, continuity, and change over time, or CCOT. So I'm not going to go over these things right now, but just understand that everything that is asked of you is based upon these 4 things. So every question is either going to be you contextualizing something, comparing, contrasting, cause and effect, and then what changes and what stays the same over time. That's what change and continuity over time is. APUSH disciplinary practices. So you're expected to be able to analyze both primary and secondary sources. And again, I will explain later in how to analyze primary and secondary sources. There's a very specific way that we're going to be doing that through historical context, intended audience, point of view, and purpose. You're expected to be able to make historically defensible claims. This is going to be your thesis for your essays. And support your argument using evidence. So whatever your historically defensible claim is in your essays, you have to be able to support that with documents, with outside knowledge. And then use historical reasoning to explain relationships among historical evidence. You know, how do these 2 documents go together with each other? How do these ideas go together with each other? So these are all things that you're expected to be able to do as well. And then also throughout the course, we'll be learning about thematic learning objectives. American and national identity, politics and power, work exchange, technology, culture and society, migration and settlement, geography and the environment, America and the world. All of the different topics that we talk about, the content that you guys learn, everything's going to follow under one or more of these things. So like you look at like the Louisiana Purchase, for instance, that would go under migration and settlement. The Constitution of the United States and the creation of that might be American and national identity, but also politics and power. And again, speaking about the Louisiana Purchase, in addition to migration and settlement, that could also be geography and the environment as well. So all of the content that we learn will fall under these thematic learning objectives. These are some videos that I have found on YouTube that are geared towards helping you guys with the LEQ, that's this one, the DBQ, and the SAQs. I will be updating this page and maybe adding to this slide deck as we go when I start to find some different resources that may be better resources, or just things that I think will be helpful to you throughout the course. So, in a nutshell then, that's the basic breakdown of basically everything that we do in the course. Now you should have a decent understanding of what is expected in terms of the AP exam. And then also understanding that everything that we do in this course is going to be geared towards that. We're going to be doing all kinds of multiple choice questions, all kinds of SAQs. We're going to be doing LEQs and DBQs. You guys are going to be practicing all of those historical thinking skills of causation and comparison and CCOT. Everything that we do is related to you being successful in May on the AP test. We have a lot of fun as well, a lot of laughs, so it's not going to be completely mundane and boring. So I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. And go back and review this video as many times as you need to throughout the year so you know what's up. Because part of the responsibility, most of the responsibility of learning is you. So I'm excited for a fantastic school year, and that's it for now.